Don't waste your time. One morning in a quiet town, there was a man named Jack. He wasn't special in any particular way. Just an ordinary guy. Jack worked long hours at a small clothing store, standing behind the counter, ringing up customers day in and day out. Life was stable but felt incomplete, like something was missing. He went through his daily routine, wondering why time seemed to slip away so quickly, without bringing him any closer to the fulfillment he thought he'd have by now. Jack had often heard people talk about living with passion, seizing the day, and using your time wisely to grow. But he never really understood it, not until one day, when an encounter would change his whole perspective on time. An unexpected meeting. On a crisp autumn morning, Jack was tidying up his store when an older man walked in. He had a sharp appearance, dressed in a dark suit, and his silver hair reflected the morning light. The man looked at Jack for a moment before speaking. "Hello, young man. Could I have a few minutes of your time?" he asked, his voice calm but purposeful. Jack, a bit puzzled by the stranger's request, agreed, and they sat down at a small table in the back of the store. The man introduced himself as Richard, a seasoned investor who had spent his life in business. Richard had learned many hard lessons along the way, but the most important one, he said, was this: time is the most precious resource we have. If you don't use it wisely, you'll pay a heavy price later.
Jack was intrigued but skeptical. Richard went on to tell Jack his story. When Richard was younger, he had been like Jack, working day in and day out, convinced there was plenty of time to figure things out. He'd put off pursuing his passions, thinking that work would eventually pay off. But when he looked back, he realized how much time had been wasted. Time never waits for anyone, and opportunities that aren't seized fade into the past, never to return. Every moment you waste, Richard said, is a moment you can never get back. You might think you have time, but trust me, it slips away faster than you realize. The wake-up call. That conversation hit Jack harder than he expected. He had spent years following a path that wasn't truly his. He'd been afraid to change, afraid to fail, afraid to pursue what really mattered. The truth was, he had been wasting precious time on things that didn't align with his heart. For the next few days, Jack couldn't stop thinking about Richard's words. The more he reflected, the more he realized how much time he had let slip by without purpose. He wasn't truly living, he was just going through the motions. He had let his days become a blur, waiting for the perfect moment to start something meaningful. Then, one afternoon, something inside him clicked. Jack decided he couldn't wait any longer. He began to explore new possibilities, taking online courses about marketing, learning about e-commerce, and even starting a blog to share his thoughts and experiences. At first, it wasn't easy. The blog had only a handful of readers, and the tasks felt overwhelming. But for the first time in a long while, Jack felt alive, driven by something greater than just paying the bills. Time. A priceless asset. Jack's life slowly began to change. He started to value his time, not just for work, but for personal growth, for relationships, for doing what he truly loved. He learned how to manage his hours more efficiently, to dedicate time to things that enriched him, and to stop spending time on things that drained him. Jack realized that life wasn't about doing as much as possible. It was about doing the right things, the things that aligned with his purpose and brought real value to his life and the lives of others. A year later, Jack had a new job, a career that made him proud. He had finally stopped wasting his time and had started making the most of every moment. His blog began to grow, and he was even teaching others how to make time work for them, showing them how small decisions today could lead to big changes tomorrow. The final lesson. In his free time, Jack now taught others what Richard had taught him. Time is something we all have, but it's also something we can never get back. He shared how so many people spend their days doing things they think they have to do, instead of focusing on what they really want to achieve. His advice was simple but powerful. If you're not careful, life will pass you by. Don't let time slip away without truly living. Start now. Take control of your time, and use it for something meaningful. Jack learned that no matter how much time you have, it's never enough if you don't make the most of it. You don't need to wait for the right moment to begin. The best time to start is always now. The final lesson. In his free time, Jack now taught others what Richard had taught him. Time is something we all have, but it's also something we can never get back. He shared how so many people spend their days doing things they think they have to do, instead of focusing on what they really want to achieve. His advice was simple but powerful. If you're not careful, life will pass you by. Don't let time slip away without truly living. Start now. Take control of your time, and use it for something meaningful. Jack learned that no matter how much time you have, it's never enough if you don't make the most of it. You don't need to wait for the right moment to begin. The best time to start is always now.